You're listening to Health Professional Radio. My name is Wayne Bucklar, and today my guest is the CEO of Can Group, and we'll explain in a minute what the Can Group does. But the CEO is Peter Crock, and he joins me today from Melbourne in Australia. Peter, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Wayne. Great to be here.
Now, Peter, fill us in. What is it the Can Group does, and where do you do it?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the where do we do it, and I'm actually in the car at the moment driving to our undisclosed location, so hopefully you won't pick up any markers on the way. But yeah, as part of our licence requirement, we're not able to disclose where we're operating, but we are the first licensed cultivator of medicinal cannabis in Australia, or first commercial licensed cultivator, and in fact yesterday received our first permit, so that we're taking delivery of plants and now are underway with cultivating the first medicinal cannabis.
Now, medicinal cannabis is a pretty hot topic in the health sector at present, but growing what would I call them, drugs with street value is not new in Australia, because there's been poppy fields and there's been some alkaloids grown in Australia for a few years. Why do you think cannabis is attracting so much attention?
Look, I think because it's been prohibited for so long, there actually is a lot of or a lack of clinical evidence around it. So I think the idea of being able to move into this area and establish what is a whole new industry in Australia and allow access to patients is really what it's about. So you're correct, there is a lot of material that's being used, but the issue with that for patients today is that they don't really know what they're receiving, what they're taking, and our objective is first and foremost to accelerate access for Australian patients to well-characterised, reproducible and safe and effective product. And clearly we've got to get involved early in the piece to get a clinical evidence base that will give medicos the wherewithal to know when and how to prescribe this, and dose rates and everything else. So it's exciting being at the forefront of that whole area.
Now, Peter, I guess this is an obvious question or observation, but just confirm for me that this is not a product that's going to be on the shelf as a series of roll joints. This will be a product that looks like a medicine and has the format of a medicine and a drug.
Yeah, correct. It needs to be precise, and we need to have the traceability so that really from plant to patient, it's understood where the product is moving and then how the patient's responding to it too. So yes, this isn't going to be an over-the-counter job, and it'll be well controlled, well characterised and understood.
Now, I can understand why it's a requirement that your locations are kept reasonably private. I'm guessing that security is something that you're going to have to worry about.
Yes, yeah, it is. And the issue with that is that cannabis is highly divertible. So anyone that gets hold of a plant, they can be down the pub 10 minutes later making some good money on it. And that's where the Office of Drug Control have made it very clear. And we understood that from an early stage. So when you apply for a license, you can actually apply for a license before you've built any facilities. Make sure that you've got all of the checks and balances in place in terms of fit and proper person tests and other things that have to be done to satisfy the license. Mm-hmm. We saw this coming and in fact invested heavily in a facility where we knew security was going to be a requirement. So in terms of the multiple barriers to entry and the CCTV and other requirements that we knew the Office of Drug Control would have, we invested and had a proven capability, which was why, in fact, we were granted the first license, because we had all of those facilities ready and operational, ready to go to start cultivating medicinal cannabis as soon as we could.
And I guess it's important to make the point that you are a serious commercial enterprise. You're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange.
Yes, and that was an important part for us to be able to. We already know that we've got to scale up. So our initial facility is a small capacity. We can't say exactly how much we're growing and where it is, but We've already secured the lease on a second facility that's now being bought under that same license. That will be once we have everything in place there. And our growth plan is to be able to scale up quickly and allow access to patients as soon as possible to the right product.
Now, Peter, being the first is always a bit fraught with difficulty. Will you have to go through and get therapeutic goods approval for your end product?
That I think that's going to happen in due course, but the way that they've set it up initially with the special access scheme or authorised prescriber is where they're allowing patient access to an unregistered product. So if this had to go through the traditional TGA route, you'd actually be looking at 15 years before you got to a patient, an approved product for patients, whereas working under the special access scheme, we can provide access to product, but it will accelerate, and I think we will in due course end up with a pharmaceutical grade TGA approved product. But in the short term, we will be able to supply product to patients under the SAS or AP schemes.
So when do you expect to have, your first crops harvested and a product in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we yesterday actually had a bit of a handover ceremony. The genetics that we're using for our first crop is coming from Agriculture Victoria. They took the initiative to get the ball rolling in Australia with medicinal cannabis. And so we've been able to access 4 strains from them that we're taking delivery of today. So that cultivation is already underway in that we're using cuttings from their plant. So it's by propagation that you get generations and the crops coming through. So the cuttings that we receive today will stay in a vegetative state for a number of weeks and then into flowering for 6 to 8 weeks. So it's in probably it'll be August that we expect to have the first plants coming through to harvest with what we're doing.
That's a fairly rapid cycle. For people who are patients who are anxiously waiting this to be available, how long do you think then before it's something that's going to be prescribable?
Well, it's actually prescribable now. That's the thing. So, and in fact, an important part for us is that we're not allowed to advertise product or services from our perspective. We need to be approached by medicos. So an important part of this process will be the education and ensuring that doctors understand what's required from the TGA perspective in terms of the special access scheme or authorised prescriber. They have to show that they're a specialist in the area, and I use specialist with inverted commas around it, in that this will be for GPs and any number of medicos that want to look in this area. I think we need to work with them to understand what training is required for the TGA to be satisfied that they've done their homework in effect and are appropriate to prescribe this. But that process can start now, and the product that we will have that we'll be harvesting, the first lot of that, or a portion of it, is already allocated and will be going back to the Victorian government for the clinical trials that they're working on. But that doesn't preclude us from having product available for medicos who want to prescribe it, and that's where they'll need to approach us and say, here's the patient, have you got a product that we can use in this area?
If you've just joined us today, I'm in conversation with Peter Crock, the CEO of Can Group Limited, which is the first commercial grower of cannabis in Australia, who today are beginning the process. And we've been discussing the use of cannabis in Australia for medical purposes. Peter, many of our audience are health professionals. What would you like them to take away from today's interview?
I think the key thing what their patients are looking for is how can they get access to this product. And for me, I think the important step is what we need to do to educate doctors to show them the pathway that they can take as of today under the special access scheme or authorised prescriber. And we're looking forward to them approaching us because we can't advertise, and it makes sense that we don't want to be out there spruiking anything. We are looking for the medicos to come to us and say, here's a patient cohort or a patient that we're looking for products for, can you please provide products that will meet this specification? So educating them as to what products are going to be applicable for which patient conditions, and how they can be taken through the process to become an authorised prescriber or prescribing under the special access scheme, is where we'd be more than happy to help them if they want to approach us on that front.
Now, for Peter, for listeners who would like to know more, how can they get in touch?
Through our website, so Can Group Limited, that's CANN grouplimited.com, and there's a contact opportunity or contact details there where you can call or send an email, and we'd be happy to close the loop and get back in touch with them.
Peter Crock, CEO of Can Group Limited, thank you for being with us today. It's been a pleasure having you, and we might look at doing another story in a couple of months and talk a little more about what it is that medicos need to do and have a look at that education component for health professionals.
That'd be terrific. Thanks, Wayne. Great to be here.
Now, if you've just joined us, you've just missed my conversation with Peter, but the good news is we have a transcript on our website. You can also hear an audio archive of the interview in full on SoundCloud. Both of those are available at the Health Professional Radio website at www.hpr.fm. And for those of you who missed the website that we mentioned before for Can Group Limited, it's www.cangrouplimited.com. This is Health Professional Radio.